During the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, Mao aimed to get rid of the Chinese old traditions and favored the new Maoist concept. Mao attempted to use the youth to spread this phenomenon. On May 25, 1966, students at the Beijing University posted posters denouncing the Beijing president for suppressing discussion of the Wuhan affair. The students quickly spread the rally. In response, Liu Shaoqi sent party work teams to keep the movement under control. Student group teams were then organized by the party work teams to attack other students who had educated class backgrounds. In July, work teams were withdrawn by Liu Shaoqi. The rebels were then reincarnated into Red Guards. The Red Guards were local peasant militia made up of middle school to university students who supported soldiers of the Red Army. Starting in August, students wore armbands to show support in Beijing. On August 18th, millions of the Red Guard rallied on the Gate of Heavenly Peace. The purpose of the Red Guards were to kill the Four Olds. The Four Olds were the old traditions and customs of China, and Mao wanted to get rid of them. Mao described everything that the Red Guards should do in the Little Red Book. The Red Guards religiously followed the Little Red Book.
My name is Wenguang Huang, and I am 9 years old. I am the head of the Little Red Guards at my school, so I help promote Chairman Mao's revolution. We sing songs about bringing down Confucian tradition and old rituals, because we are taught that traditional ways must be abandoned. Many of the books we read and stories we are told portray traditional rituals as horrible and important. We are taught to support Chairman Mao and communist society because there will be fewer differences in wealth and power, so people will be less selfish and they will want to help others. Sometimes my commitments to Chairman Mao and the Red Guard make me question my commitments to my family. When my grandmother chose to be buried in a coffin, like the traditional way, instead of cremated, I was hesitant to help her because it went against everything I was taught as a student and as a member of the Red Guard. I almost wanted to report it to my teacher, because we were instructed to report any anti-party activity. But I knew that my father would be publicly shamed, so I did not. It was a hard decision because my duty as a Red Guard member was to defend and support Chairman Mao's revolution, not to encourage old tradition.
Until 1955, there was no standardized form of written Mandarin. Mandarin was made up of ideograms, not letters. So Mao created the language reform in the 1950s. The People's Republic of China introduced a written form of Mandarin called Pinyin. As a result, literacy rates increased from 20% in 1949 to 70% in 1976. In 1967, the Up to the Mountains and Down to the Villages campaign was put into place to send educated youths in urban areas to live and work in agrarian areas in order to better understand the role of the manual agrarian laborer in the Chinese society. The government's main aim was to get rid of the urban areas of the gangs and delinquent youth who had threatened to become uncontrollable in the general turmoil. During 1967 to 1972, over 12 million young people moved from the towns to the countryside. Many had no countryside skills, and their stay was unsatisfying and very challenging. Even with these policies, the educational system had many failures. Fewer than 1% of the working population had a university degree, and only 11% had received schooling after the age of 16. Also, between 1966 and 1970, 130 million of China's young people simply stopped attending school or university. In the end, Mao believed that learning and studying were dismissed as worthless unless they served the revolution. It was important to train the loyal party workers than it was to prepare China's young people to take their place in a modern state.
My name is Yeffy. In 1966, the Cultural Revolution broke out, and the school was changed into a forum for political propaganda. All the students in the school, some of whom were only 7 years old, became Little Red Guards. Led by some adults, they criticized teachers and administrators in the school. Everything got really jumbled up, because parents who were important were no longer important, while those who were not important became important. A friend of my father who worked in the fields became a barefoot doctor. He checked me and a lot of other peasants' health for infectious disease. It was a little strange. My mother was very supportive of Mao and viewed the Cultural Revolution as a time of redemption. She made us read from Mao's Red Book before each meal. In 1968, I began middle school, number 101 in Beijing. While my parents went off to May 7 school, I stayed at an adolescent center which forced me to become a parent to my 7-year-old sister. It was hard, but I knew it was what Ma wanted. School began to change too. A new written form of Mandarin was introduced so everyone could understand it. It was called Pinyin. During my final year of middle school, we didn't study typical things like arts and sciences, but we baked bricks and built air raid shelters. After graduating from middle school, I was assigned to a factory that was attached to Beijing University, then was moved to a singing and dancing group from Beijing University called Mao Zedong Thought Propaganda Team. Each school had a Mao Zedong Thought Propaganda Team to promote Mao's ideals.
Once the Cultural Revolution was over, the youth who survived were considered the lost generation. The lost generation was made up of young Chinese in their teens thrown into the decade-long turmoil of the Cultural Revolution that Mao Zedong unleashed in 1966. Most in this group would have been Red Guards, who in those tumultuous years were given free rein to attack and torture intellectuals, their families, and many more people. As a result of the turmoil among the youth in China in the 1960s, the lost generation gained a distrust of great leaders due to living through Mao's years of policies that forced the youth into supporting him and the party religiously. Also, the lack of formal education impacted the lost generation's ability to make decisions. Thus, not having gone through school, they are more likely to have ideas that are less conformist than those before them. In the long run, Mao's education policies impacted the youth greatly for the rest of their lives.